afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the panel on IP tech scaling with competitive edge. My name is Barrett Spraggins. I'll be moderating the panel. I'm a U.S. patent attorney with an IP boutique law firm in the United States. For the last 14 years, I have been in intellectual property and managing the global patent portfolios for corporations of all sizes, from small startups to large multinationals. I love working with startups and helping them develop intellectual property that's going to protect them and also turn into an asset that's very valuable. And with us today, we have Dina Chavas with...
I'm not an attorney,
so
I will change.
And Alejandra Pena, and joining us remotely is Fiona Law. Hello, everyone. Hello,
Hi,
Fiona. So actually, I could talk and introduce everyone, but why don't everyone just tell a little bit about themselves, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so I'm Dina Chavas. It's wonderful for me to be here today. I'm a corporate consulting director at Clark Modet, the IP group, that I want to be the referent in IP tech solutions, so I think this is a good start of my presentation. I have more than 15 years experience concerning all the topics of IP, intellectual property management, technology intelligence, economic valuation, technology transfer. And our main goal the last years in the company is to create solutions, IP solutions, complemented with technology. So I think this panel is very interesting for us because we have the opportunity to present what we are doing in IP tech and what we have challenging and transforming our company also that uses IP, has a strategic aligned to business strategy also. So I think this is very interesting to have this opportunity. It's not possible to speak in Spanish because I think your Spanish is not so good, but I will try to see
extensively.
at the end. I think
apologize.
Barrett could say gracias. And it's a great opportunity for me to be here. Thank you to have the discussion.
Yes, thank you. Alejandra?
Well, so thank you so much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. Just a brief introduction of myself. I am Alejandra. I am managing partner at Ecija, which is a law firm basically based in Spain, Portugal, and Latin America. I have been working in the last 15 years in doing IP and innovation work for a different type of clients. I have been involved in the last years a lot in the startup ecosystem, and very happy to discuss with you, even being a patent attorney, and with you all. So thank you for the invitation.
And Fiona,
yeah, sure.
Hi everyone, my name is Fiona Bull. I'm a European patent attorney at Clarkson. I'd like to say I'm excited to be there today, but actually I'm just very disappointed to be missing out. I have 15 years experience as a patent attorney at Clarkson, creating value from innovation, working with most of the startups and entrepreneurs to build an IP strategy to grow with them and take them to commercial success. I also work with investors doing IP due diligence, which I think gives me a unique perspective on what startups and entrepreneurs should be doing to help attract funding. I'm really excited to be part of this panel.
That's great. Well, so we have a lot of startups in the audience and at this conference, and I think one of the questions we have is, what is IP? What is the value to a startup? Is IP actually important to a startup? I think that's just a fundamental starting question. I think a lot of people see their IP get filed, sit on the shelf, get dusty. People don't actually use it. Is that true? Is there value to a startup in protecting their IP, spending the money? Let's start with you, Fiona.
I think so. I mean, of course, I would say that, but it's patents. There's this misconception that perhaps it's not something that startups need to be spending their money on. But I have a different view. I think that for a startup, they may not have a product product or a prototype, in fact, their entire value is based on intangibles. So by having them, it's not necessarily a patent isn't always the answer. Trade secrets are very valuable trademarks. And by having those assets, it's a way to articulate to potential investors the value and to use that to attract investment. So I think it's about building value in a startup more than, rather than thinking about patent enforcement, for example.
Okay. Dina, do you agree with Fiona? Are there's some industries or types of startups where maybe patents aren't important, that there's something else in the IP strategy that we should be thinking about?
Okay, so we all know IP is important. I think we are here because we know IP is a strategy and create this competitive advantage for companies, mainly startups, because they are starting her own business, and this is why define the intangible assets could be the impact that they needed to get investment or to create this value and have this possibility to transfer or license the technology. I don't think it's a question of industries or sectors or segments. I think it's our main goal is to define a very good strategy of IP related to the business strategy. And sometimes patent it's not a modality that we want to use because trade secrets could be more interesting, could be more, could create this differentiation that is important in the markets or it could is a driving force to creating this impact that we want to do. So I not see one sector or one industry that could be the focus to be protected. I think it's always a question of strategy. And since the beginning, I think this is a recommendation. Since the beginning, we need to have this IP strategy aligned to the business strategy, because if you want to have the return of investment, and many of the startups build up the intangible assets, and they are creating value with the assets. So, and sometimes they are what we call high-tech, high-growth. So they start with a technology or a solution protected by trade secrets, for example, but impact will be developing the intangible assets and creating value. So to add what Fiona says, I think it's always a question of strategy and analyze the potential market and then define the business strategy aligned to the IP.
Mm-hmm. And Alejandra, we've talked about bringing in a lot of different aspects of the global strategy, trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that's important?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we can link both questions. And I mean, if you ask that question maybe 50 years ago, the answer would be different. But nowadays, living in a digital ecosystem where all the sectors want to be digitalized, where the client, the final customer is very close to technology, I wouldn't say that that most of the companies have a lot of IP values and assets that need to be protected. I mean, from the European, and in particular from the Spanish perspective, there are different pieces of law that could help them in order to make that protection that we are looking for. We got copyrights, we got trademarks, we got, of course, patents, trade secrets, industrial designs, and many other aspects. But nowadays, if you check the last big transactions in the US, in Europe, in Israel, in the East, well, you probably see that the real value of those companies are not real estate. They are intangible assets. So if the core asset of your company is an IP1 and you do not protect that, I guess that you are not focusing your strategy properly. Lawyers are absolutely relevant in that strategy from the very beginning, not at the last time like firemen when there is a due diligence, say, oh, nothing is well done, we need to start from the very beginning, we are late. I mean, we love to enjoy the work from the beginning, when the startup is coming up, when the idea is flourishing, and at that time we understand that there are a lot of added value that could be proposed to clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think everyone here definitely agrees IP is important.
We live on that. So
yes, we.
The question was quite this.
Right. Fiona, do you have any war stories of when someone didn't apply an IP strategy properly and it just ended badly? I think that's always entertaining.
Yeah, I have lots of stories. Do you know the story that I always sort of that always comes to mind is is not one where they got it wrong, one where they got it right, but by accident, but they articulated it completely wrong. So it was I was doing due diligence on a company that had some software for growing crystals in a better yield, and and when I asked them if they had patents, they said, well, we don't believe in patents in any way. You can patent software. And that was their answer. Now, actually, after the due diligence, we realized that it wasn't appropriate to patent what they had because they couldn't tell if the crystals had been grown using this particular piece of software. So it was appropriate to keep it as a trade secret. But the way they answered that question, immediately the investors thought they don't know what they're doing. It would have been a much better answer to say, we really thought about it and actually we kept it as a trade secret and this is why. It's about giving the right impression during due diligence and really thinking about your IP and having a strategy. So it wasn't quite that they got it wrong, but I think they got it right by accident, which was just as bad.
Alejandra, do you have a story where it actually turned out well?
Well, I was thinking on the worst ones, that there are a lot of them. And I mean, my first mentor, my first boss, when I started being a lawyer, used to say that lawyers are like bullfighters. The more you fight, the better lawyers you are. So I must be a wonderful one. But I mean, there are a lot of nice stories where people, they are happy and willing to be recommended, to follow your recommendations, to do the work properly from the very beginning. So when can you see that? I mean, when after, like the happy ending, like the end of the story, there is a nice transaction, there is an exit, the startup and the founders get rich, they go to live with you in Bahamas, and
Exactly.
they forget to work. That's true, yeah. And they got the clues. Because on the other side, I have also been involved in some transactions where everything was crashed because there was not, a real protection on the properties. Even the license agreements were not signed at the very beginning. It was not clear who were the owner of the copyrights and so on. So, if you follow that recommendations from your lawyers, you keep clear on that. You got all this clearance. You got your portfolio of trademarks, patents, copyright, or whatever. At the end of the day, going through a due diligence is much better. You feel much more comfortable, and there are not those contingencies that sometimes make a fail in a transaction.
Okay, I think that's absolutely right. And as a company grows, does the policy and the procedures that they're following, does it need to change? I think of a startup, 20, 30, 50, 100, I guess to 200 people, it becomes hard to keep track of what everyone's working on and understanding, well, this guy's working on this project, this one. How do you still capture all of that innovation and make sure that nothing's slipping through? And I'm thinking, as a patent attorney, strictly patents. Maybe this is a good one for you, Fiona. What do you tell your clients as they're growing? How do you manage that growth? Is it simply just a matter of filing more patents, or is there something else to it?
One piece of advice I always give is make sure the IP is at the heart of the business and managed appropriately. So the IP shouldn't be, don't push it down to perhaps a scientist that only knows one little area of the business. Set up a committee, have the business people and the scientists, the tech guys together, really thinking about, as Dina says, there's no point having an IP portfolio if it doesn't support the business plan. So I think it's about ensuring that IP is really put at the heart of on board meetings. and to keep that business alignment.
Okay. Back to you, Dina.
If I may answer one thing
Okay.
concerning this question, I think it's interesting also to promote awareness and training since the beginning, because we need to identify the impact that all IP measures could have in your strategy, in your business strategy. We all know IP is important, but we need to be aware, for example, why it's important for me to have to put in secret my information, why it's interesting for me to know if I want to evaluate my patent, and why it's important to protect as a patent, because I can evaluate it and have an economic return of that. It's very interesting since the beginning to implement an IP culture, and then in the use of the awareness also in all employees and collaborators, because it's this that could be the match between why IP is important and why I will use IP. So I think this is interesting to have this point, because it could make the difference in big companies also.
Yeah, but I would say that, with that same path, that the bigger the company is, the easier it is to create some awareness. At the very beginning, when they have no funds, they say, okay, I will invest the money in the strategic issues for us. It is not lawyers, it is not accountants, it's basically the product or the service or wherever. But when they are going up, they got some conversations with investors, they start some kind of due diligence, that chats that we had in the past that were absolutely nonsense for us, now they make sense, and we need to follow that path. So, and normally the bigger they are, the more money and budget they got to invest in lawyers. So this is a good crossroads for lawyers and startups at the time.
But I've found that if they don't have the good habits from the beginning, it's hard to just jump in and come in, at a large corporation and just change everything. It's much easier when it's coming from the very beginning. I assume you've had similar experiences?
Exactly. It's when you start with your strategy.
Right.
I think it's. I think we are now speaking always with the same terms, but that's it. Because if the strategy is not aligned with your business strategy, it's very difficult to implement this culture and to get across your life cycle of innovation a good protection concerning all your IP rights. And it could be patents, or it could be trade secrets, or it could be trademarks. I think the question, it's not a modality, but it's to have, as Fiona said before, this modality that you can create your intangible assets. That is important for your growth. And all we want it's make these changes and to have this return of investment that we all want when we protect our IP. So our objective is, how can I get money with my IP? One of the most important. It's not the only one, but it's one of the most important in my case.
Well, tell me a little bit, we've talked a little bit about this before, about using emerging technologies, blockchain, your favorite topic. How are you using innovation to track and improve innovation at a company?
Yeah, I think we need to innovate, even if it's concerning IP. So we are here to talk about IP tech. And IP tech is to create IP solutions based on technology. I'm a very, very big fan of blockchain. I have the opportunity to speak before with Barrett and talking about some IP tech solutions that we developed at Clark Modded. We want to be in the front line of innovation. So our main goal is to create IP solutions based on technology. Concerning blockchain, we have a real use on IP, so it's the possibility to create the proof of existence of an intangible asset, so a digital file. Imagine you have a trade secret. One of the characteristics that you need to have to be considered a trade secret is you need to identify your secret. And with blockchain, for example, you can have this proof of existence. You don't need to go to the notary and to have this file and this proof of existence. So this is one of the solutions that we developed, and it's a real solution of IP tech. And another one is based on artificial intelligence and big data. And what we do is the tracking patent system. So if you want to make a technology watch to see what our competitors are doing, so you can use, for example, a brief description of your technology, and using our application, what you will have is first, naturally, all the state-of-the-art concerning the technologies, but then you have the main indicators that will help you using a dashboard. For example, main competitors, technology trends, principal markets. And this is interesting to democratize this kind of information. We all know that using patent databases, it's terrible, even for us, and we work with IP. So our objective is always to create different solutions based on technologies that could help, in this case, startups, because they need to have access to this kind of information and this patent information that's very useful for the definition of the strategy, and technology can help.
Well, and making it simple to understand.
Exactly.
You know, getting it down to a 1 or 2 page summary. This is what's happening in the field, and you know, not getting too deep into
Exactly.
okay, now read this patent application.
And it's terrible. You will not understand. So
Yes.
I think this is the most important, is have this capacity to analyze the information and to be able to identify what is important, but not reading the old stuff of the patent. I know for you lawyers this is very important, but for our consultants it's very difficult, this kind of language.
Right.
But we were discussing earlier about legal tech, which is basically applying technology to, to the legal sector, to general counsel, to companies, to law firms, and at the end of the day, is using, identifying the pain points that you got in your daily basis when we need to file or we need to identify what our competitors are using. I wouldn't say that let's go for blockchain or let's go for AI or for machine learning or whatever. Try to understand which is your pain point in the organization, which is not working properly, and try to explore the different technologies in order to look for the right one to solve that matter. I have been in many meetings with clients say, hey, I got blockchain. For what? For tracing chicken, like I have seen in some supermarkets? I mean, I get a message. I am at the queue there, say, a chicken traced by blockchain. Wow, that's the time to avoid a blockchain. I am a fan, okay? Don't get wrong on that. But I will say that, hey, what's the point on your business? What is not working as good as you would like, and how technology can help you to do so. I mean, we are the office. We have implemented a lot of technology to make the work of the lawyers easier. And also we are helping clients to automatize certain tasks that are not added value for them. A lot of repetitive work, you make it much more profitable for them, you avoid the human mistakes and so on. So I guess that even for lawyers that are not very well known as very innovatives, we need to take the lead of the innovation and use all the technologies in order to make our work better, faster, and well, probably the client wants cheaper. That's something to discuss.
Yeah, well, and just cutting through the weeds of the IP field, you know, a lot of the terminology is difficult, and if you are a startup and you don't have an in-house legal team, you know, it's often a non-legal person that's having to review this stuff. So anytime you can make it simpler seems like a good thing.
Yeah, and I think it's important. We all know that it's very difficult at the beginning to have this possibility to have an inside legal department based on IP issue and all the stuff. But it's important to understand why it's important, why it's strategic, and have this complementation of the IP consultant that could help you to draft your patent, to define what are the legal issues that you need to take care to start your business, and democratize this kind of information using new technology. So this is the wonderful scenario that we want to develop, and we are here to discuss.
Well, and probably the most valuable thing, you know, for a startup is what's it do to valuations? Yeah, I know, Fiona, you do a lot of due diligence work. You work for investor groups coming in to evaluate the IP portfolio as part of figuring out an amount to invest. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've seen in your work? What do investors care about?
In in my view, what investors really want to see is IP due diligence is not a tick box exercise anymore. It's not patents aren't a numbers game. It's not about having loads of patents and loads of trademarks. What it's about is about having a really solid, coherent strategy. And my top tip, because when I'm acting on behalf of the investors, the first thing I look for in the data room is a really nice summary, a summary of how the IP relates to the business plan and to the products. And just a nice one pager, a strategy. That is the best thing a starter can do. They may not have the money to file a patent application, but everybody could write down a plan for when they're going to file the patents, what they're going to cover, and enables them to make better decisions in the future.
That seems to be one of the key takeaways is have a plan, start it early, be intentional.
Exactly, and always think that you can have a return of your investment. I think we need to switch our mind, and for startups it's very interesting. You don't need to identify IP has a cost. You need to identify how IP has a strategy, and you will have the return of investment of your IP. And during my 15 years of experience leading with projects concerning IP, the first question that an investor will ask you is, what about your IP? And if your IP is not protected, it's very difficult to continue the deal. So let's see that, and not only based on patents. I think this is a good recommendation also, that we can say it's not only to have a patent, but you need to have a patent and all the legal issues that are related to your IP also. But effectively, I think it's a good recommendation that we can share with you.
Well, and it's something that is quite relevant, that is, making aware them, the startup, what are the assets that they can protect and which one they cannot. This is a very funny situation. In every kickoff with a startup, they say, we would like to protect our idea. Okay, no way. Second question, we want to protect your trademark. Okay, we can do that. Where would you like to do so? Worldwide. Okay, we need to pay the fees in every single country. Okay, Spain is okay. So, a budget also makes you feasible the work that you will be accomplishing to them. Right. But again, this is an asset value, looking at the horizon and trying to provide a real advice for added value for them too.
Absolutely, yeah. The answer, unfortunately, as a patent attorney, isn't always file a patent.
Exactly.
There's a lot that goes into it.
We all know that, I think. Right. I think why it's important to have a patent. It's important to have a patent, but right. We have another strategies or another modalities that we can use.
It's more important to have a strategy.
Exactly, yeah. That's the point. It's not only the patent. I think we need to change a little bit of this mindset concerning, if we talk about IP, we're talking about patent and trademarks. That's it.
Right.
Now we are talking about different modalities, and the thing is, so let's be focused in what we want to protect, what we want to do with our IP, how can I commercialize my IP, or how can I create value with my IP and then have the right protection?
Well, with that, we're almost out of time. Are there any questions from the audience? Has to be in English.
Because the Spanish of Barrett is a little bit difficult.
and I suspect Fiona.
But next year, Barrett promised that he will do it in Spanish.
To be fluent? Yes. Okay.
Yes, I would like to ask just a quick question. What is the best way to protect an algorithm? Is it through...
Protect what?
An algorithm.
Algorithm.
Algorithm. Okay.
Is through a patent or is through a trade secret? What is your opinion?
Sorry, it kind of cut out a little bit.
So what is the best way to protect an algorithm?
An algorithm. Oh, we were just talking about
Yeah,
this.
we were discussing about that. I mean, and the answer, I am Galician, so I would say depende. And it will depend on many assets, but I would say that there are different topic of law or pieces of law that could help you. Sometimes the better thing is to use a trade secret. Sometimes you need to look for some kind of notary deposit. Sometimes you need to go through NDAs. I mean, at the end of the day, you need to check what you have and how would you like to share that information or not with some counterparties. For instance, there is, in my view, something that has been quite, on the press with regard to this riders law recently passed in Spain, where these companies were requested to show their algorithms against the companies and the employees and so on. Well, sometimes if it is your added value, if it is your IP and you want to protect that, you may use some topics or some specific laws. For instance, the trade secret one, that would be probably the most adequate one. Okay.
So I'm a Portuguese, but the answer is it depends also, so we can share this sentence. In my case, I think, and it's complemented, but you need to analyze if it could be a patent or not. So this is the first. Then if it's not a patent, why you cannot use trade secret to protect. It's also an intangible asset. You can evaluate it. But the topic that you can use new technologies. We are here to talk about IP tech. So you can use blockchain because the main importance of blockchain is to make the proof of existence of the digital files. So if you consider your software has a trade secret and then you have this proof of existence using blockchain, you are able to identify your intangible assets, and this could be the best way to protect it.
It's a great question. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I know everyone on the panel would love to continue the conversation offline. They're all available to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you,
I
Barrett.
enjoyed hearing you talk. It was
Thank you
great.
all.
Thank you.